Okay, guys, we're going to do Hilchot Teshuva now, Parak Tet, ninth Parak of Hilchot Teshuva. And ninth Parak of Hilchot Teshuva, we're going to do it, like I said, briefly. It's technically, it's brief in the sense that it only has two halachot in it, right? It's Aleph and Bet. It doesn't have 8, 9, 10, 12 halachot like some of the other chapters in Hilchot Teshuva. And it deals with a topic that you have to ask, what is this doing in Hilchot Teshuva? Parak Tet deals primarily with the concept of schar v'onesh, of reward and punishment, and particularly with the concept of olam haba. And for the Rambam, this is very, very important. It's important for us to understand a little bit about what Olam Haba is for the Rambam in order to understand why does that find its way into Hilchot Teshuva. It also is important for us to understand what Teshuva is, according to the Rambam, and why it finds its way in here. I think, hopefully, if you've been able to reach one conclusion, and if there's one conclusion you should reach that the Rambam is trying to give us throughout Hilchot Teshuva, it's that Teshuva is not just about you did something bad, so now you have to atone. Right? It's not about atoning for sin, but it's part of a broader project of closing the distance between ourselves and God, between ourselves and other people, and it's just a generally broader picture of trying to make ourselves into better, more perfect human beings. Part of making ourselves into better and more perfect human beings is understanding what our shortcomings are and understanding that our shortcomings sometimes have to be compensated for and have to be atoned for in, I guess, using the English sense of the word. But the project doesn't stop there. The project doesn't stop with, okay, your sins have gone away, but it continues. Your goal is to be a better person. Your goal is to be, again, closer to God. And that's why the Rambam, when he talks about Hilchot Teshuva, doesn't just suffice with the dynamics of Teshuva or the theology of Teshuva, but he goes even further. If you're going to be doing Teshuva, then you're going to become a better person. If you're a better person, then you're headed towards Olam Haba. Now, why is it that if you're a better person, you're headed towards Olam Haba? Not because, again, there's a reward and a punishment. You do good things, Gan Eden. You do bad things, Gehenna. In fact, if you look in Parak Tet, you're not going to find the Rambam saying that if you do bad things, you go to Gehenna. You know what he does say? If you do good things, you go to Olam Haba. If you do bad things, you get cut out. What does that mean? Kares. Good. But let's try to understand more broadly why he thinks. So let's try to understand why the Rambam thinks in those terms. And the answer basically is that you have to understand that, again, for the Rambam, attaining Olam Haba is not like, again, you got enough checks on your check sheet, whatever, on your card, you click, do 10 mitzvot, get one free Olam Haba, whatever it is. It's the result of a lifetime of spiritual investment and spiritual development. Olam Haba is a spiritual condition. It's not something that God gives you as payment for what you've done, but it's something you attain through working hard at developing yourself spiritually. And that's why the Rambam has a very interesting description of how Olam Haba happens, the whole question of reward and punishment. And one of the major themes in this chapter is trying to understand why is it that sometimes the Torah promises worldly benefit, worldly compensation if we do mitzvot, and sometimes the Torah, alludes to the fact that the rewards that we attain will be beyond this world. And to take a look at this, if you have the text in front of you, I want you to just take a quick look at a very poetic passage here. I have it in this version, it's the third paragraph. It starts with, HaKadosh Baruch Hu natan lanu Torah zu. I'm going to read it for you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu natan lanu Torah zu, eitz chayim, v'kol ha'oseh kol ha'katuv ba v'yod'o deya gemura nechona, zoche ba le'olam haba. This is a fascinating thing. The Rambam says, God gave us a Torah, it's a tree of life, and anybody who does what it says and knows it perfectly and correctly. Why is knowing the Torah perfectly and correctly a key to Olam Haba, according to the Rambam? And this goes back to what we were saying before, because Olam Haba is not a reward for your, being a good boy, a good girl, but Olam Haba is the culmination of a spiritual process of spiritual development. And for the Rambam, your intellectual and spiritual development go hand in hand. It's nice to give a lot of tzedakah, and that's part of your spiritual development, and it's nice to do the mitzvot, but it's not sufficient if you really want to be a person who attains the highest level of spirituality. And so that's why the Rambam says you have to do what it says in the Torah, and you also have to intellectually attain correct knowledge of the Torah. In other words, you have to really understand. Let's put it, for the Rambam, the ideal person is a person who understands the world fully. You understand what it says in the Torah, and you understand what the halachot are, but you also understand how the world works. You understand physics, you understand metaphysics, you understand how God interacts with the world. For the Rambam, it's all one big, indivisible thing, and so that's why he focuses on that, and that's why it's the key to Olam Haba, because if Olam Haba is the culmination of your spiritual process, then your knowledge is part of that spiritual process, and a very key and important process. Now, the Rambam says, wait a second, so what about the world? What about all the promises that God makes? That if you do all the good things, then there'll be peace, and then there'll be prosperity, and then the rain will come at the appointed time. If you guys say Kriyat Shema, right? None of those words pertain to Olam Haba, right? It'll rain at the proper time, the right types of rain, the right types of rain. You'll gather in your crops. Tirosh, yitzar. Again, if you know that it's wine, it's olive, it's grain, all the different types of crops will gather it in. Your animals will have all of these promises are rewards that pertain to this world. So the Rambam says, why? If the whole point of all this is to attain spiritual perfection, why is it that certain passages in the Torah promise worldly rewards? And the Rambam says, I'll tell you why. Because if it rains at the right time, and your work gets done easily, and your animals are well fed, and you don't have to worry about fighting a war, and you don't have to worry about scratching together a living, that's God rewarding you. You know why? Because the easier your life is, the more time you have to invest in spiritual pursuits. If our ultimate goal is to grow spiritually, intellectually and spiritually, the Rambam go hand in hand, the more time that you have to spend on that, the more you can invest in that, and the more you can grow in that direction. The more things are easy for you in Olam Hazeh, says the Rambam, the more likely you are to have the ability to invest in attaining that spiritual perfection that is Olam Haba. But Olam Haba, the Rambam says, don't make any mistakes, right? It's not going to be, sort of you're sitting on a cloud with a halo and a harp, and your dog is next to you with its halo and its little doggy harp. None of that's going to be happening, right? Instead, B'nei Zeh, he says, if you look at the beginning of Halacha Bet, for those who have B'nei Zeh, Hitavu Kol Yisrael Nevi'ehem V'chachmeihem, right? That's why they all really wanted Yimot Melech HaMashiach. Why? Kedei she'yanuchu mimalchut harisha'ah she'eina manacha lehem liyisrael la'asok b'Torah u'b'mitzvot kahogan. All that we need, the reason that we want Mashiach to come so badly is because oppression will end. We don't have to worry about survival. We don't have to worry about fighting wars. And then we'll have time to focus on spiritual pursuits. The more we have time to focus on spiritual pursuits, Yimtzu lahem margoa, they'll have calm time, V'yirbu b'chochma, and they will increase their wisdom, Kedei sheyizku b'chayei ha'olam haba. Ultimately, the Rambam says, yes, it's true that the ultimate good is Olam Haba, but Olam Haba means attaining the highest conceivable level of spiritual perfection. That's the bottom line of Perek Tet. Perek Tet says, the more we invest in making sure that our world is good here, the more we develop spiritually, the more we become connected to this abstract idea that is closeness to God, and that is the idea of Olam Haba, means that we spend our lives in real deep and closeness to God. That's the culmination of Teshuva. If you understand that Teshuva is not just about, again, erasing bad things that happen, but it's about a process of making yourself into a better person. Every step of making yourself into a better person is another rung in the spiritual ladder, and the higher you climb, the more spiritual you are, the higher you are to achieving the ideal of human perfection. That's Perek Tet of Hilchot Teshuva.